Eagles. Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Wednesday edition of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports. I'm your host, Zander Krause. That's my co-host, Johnny Mac, John McMullen, wrapping up another OTA that John was present at yesterday, and we are officially 92 days away from the home opener. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Wednesday morning, brother?
Very well. Yeah. 3 months away, basically. June 4th, September 4th. Yeah, creeping up on us. Creeping up.
No doubt about it, John. You guys were down at OTAs yesterday, the second open OTA of the offseason here for you guys to get out. Vic Fangio Day, as we talked about on the show yesterday. Boy, does he always give us some stuff to talk about, Vic Fangio, and then plenty of on-field stuff as well. John, where do you want to start? You want to start with Vic, or you want to go on-field? Because Vic is there's a lot there.
Vic is a treasure, man. Vic is awesome.
Let's start it with Vic.
I can't say enough good things about Vic Fangio. He doesn't bullshit. He doesn't. I don't know why other coaches can't take that same approach, but 99.9% don't. And it is a breath of fresh air when you get to talk to Vic Fangio.
No doubt. He made comments on Bryce Huff, on C.J. Gardner-Johnson, talked about Jordan Davis. I thought there was some interesting stuff there. Talked about Jahad Campbell, talked about the fake news quote, and all sorts of other good stuff from Vic Fangio. So, John, just started off there with Bryce Huff and C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Really, Bryce Huff, though, is obviously the more pressing matter because of recency. But just your thoughts on what he said about those two guys, and if you want to clarify or give any quotes from Vic, or whatever, however you want to do it. But
with Bryce, and it started off with Bryce, and my buddy Ed Kratz started it off. So yeah, I'm glad he said it, because for whatever reason, people didn't talk about it. And I've mentioned it on this show numerous times. Now you know where I got it. So I'm glad that Vic said it on the record, talking about his wrist injury. And had to have surgery. Basically, as Vic said, rendered his hand essentially useless and his arm useless because he can't use his hand. So I think that is true, and I think that was a bigger part of the problem than people understood or realized. And he probably should have the Eagles probably should have shut him down, and they wouldn't have had that angst of him not performing well. Now, he wasn't performing well before that either. So it's not, and when I say that, he had one bad game, and that got sort of put under the microscope. And that's what happens when you're a big time free agent pickup. But he was getting progressively better, and then the injury happened. And Vic said, hey, and Nolan got more snaps, and Jalen got more snaps, and he said things evolve, and those guys became bigger parts of the picture, and they're younger and they're more cost effective. And he said he thinks he'll do fine in San Francisco. I kind of agree with him.
Yeah.
And for those who think Vic is playing the political game, he doesn't do that.
No, he doesn't. You can tell by the way, if you listen to him, you can tell by the way he responds. Yeah. He doesn't do that.
So he's not lying to you. That's exactly what happened. And again, I don't think he got into the scheme because he's not a fit for Vic's scheme necessarily. I agree with that part of it. But if you're like, I mean, Vic's the kind of guy later, and when he was talking about Jordan Davis, and he said he got into the best shape of his career late in the season, Vic said, the follow-up was basically, why did it take so long? And Vic admitted, I'm dodging that question. Like he tells, if he doesn't want to say something, he'll tell you he wasn't in good enough shape.
What was your takeaway from that? Because I saw two routes. Jordan Davis is a lazy shit, and Vic didn't want to comment on that publicly, or Vic has a problem with the entire offseason program across the NFL board that he's commented on before.
I wouldn't.
Maybe it was about that.
I wouldn't say lazy shit, but he didn't do what he needed to do to get it.
He's a professional athlete. Why, if he shows up not in shape? I mean, what?
Well, I mean, you're
lazy
talking about.
It's not the right word, but something. along
You're
those
talking
lines.
there's a difference between cornerbacks and wide receivers and 6'6", 350-pound defensive
That's true.
tackles. I mean, guys like Michael Pierce, who just retired in Baltimore, and these massive, yeah. I mean, part of their job is to be a little bit overweight, to be honest. And the trick is to find somebody who could play at that size and still show some athleticism. And Jordan certainly does that, but it's a fine line. And when he said he got in his best shape, and we talked to Jordan after that, and he said, maybe Peloton is the key to
Yeah.
it all, because he picked
Yeah.
up Peloton later in the season.
I'll tell you what,
Um,
John, I hate running, and I've been trying to do more cardio. I was on Peloton's website last night after listening to Jordan Davis.
Yeah, those things are expensive, so
Yeah,
get ready.
a little out of my price range there, John.
But he got into that, but I just bring that up because it shows you, in contrast to the people who say, well, he's just trying to, not throw Bryce up under the bus. He doesn't play politics, man. He tells the truth. And I know that's strange to say, because no other coach does it that I know of, but that's big, and it's awesome, by the way.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, there's no
So,
doubt about it. Yeah, his comment on CJ Gardner-Johnson, John, real quick, was funny as well. I mean, it's a cap thing. I
there's
had no problem
another
with it.
example.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had no
Yeah.
problem with it. Yeah, now there are things you can read in between the lines, and that's one of them.
Yeah.
He didn't want to deal with the high maintenance aspect of CJ Gardner-Johnson, which is, I can see
Juice
both
not worth the
sides of it.
squeeze, John. Juice is
Exactly.
not worth the squeeze.
Exactly, from that standpoint. And then on, his talking about Cooper, he dropped that he might play safety. Here's the bottom line with Cooper DeJean. They think he can do everything.
Do you think, because I said this on the afternoon show yesterday, I think he could play all 5 spots in the secondary easily.
Oh, yeah. And that's the whole point. So what he's trying to say is, well, if Sidney or Makuba don't work out, he might play safety. If Ringo and Jackson don't work, he might play outside corner. And obviously we know he can play slot corner from last year. They think he can do anything.
Right. And they're going to get him where they think he's the most valuable to the defense.
Well, they're going to get him to they're trying to put the best 5 defensive backs on the field.
Right.
And he's the movable part. Like, he can go anywhere. If Makuba's better than, a corner, or a corner's better than the safeties, he can move them around. And that just tells you what they think about Cooper DeJean as a football player. Because and then probably the biggest part of all, because Nick Sirianni's a great coach, but you can't get any information on any injury at any point. And Big's like, bang, Jahad Campbell, sometime in August. Jacoby Dean.
Camp starts in July, so it would tell you it might not be there for the start of camp.
Yeah, he's not going to be there. That's what it tells you. Now, there's a big difference. There's still some uncertainty between August 1st and August 20th, say. So,
right.
Which obviously earlier in August, the better. But, he boils it down for you. You're not going to see him till August. Jacoby, you're not going to see him for a while. That means into the season. In early, it's, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., and he was on the podium, got the podium treatment because he might be starting linebacker week 1. The job is there to take, at least in the short term.
Yep, and Vic also talked about Jahad Campbell. Basically said he was going to start at off-ball line in that linebacker room because it's a tougher position to play. What'd you make of that?
Yeah, then he got pressed, and that's where he started. And we know he follows Bobby King around in practice, who's the inside linebackers coach. So it makes sense from a foundational perspective because it's much easier to go out and just rush the passer than to play off-ball linebacker and have to read and diagnose and all that kind of thing. So the foundation is that. And when he got pressed on the pass rush upside, he said potentially, And then it was the one word answer. And then it was, what would it take to realize that getting him out there? I mean, he's not, until he sees him in August, it's hard to envision what it's going to look like. And there's other avenues as well. Like how comfortable is he with Trotter by that point? The easiest way to get him on the field probably early, especially after missing so much time, is the antithesis of the foundation of ball linebacker. The easiest place to get him on the field is go out there and rush the passer. That's it's more difficult to be a well-rounded, in his case, it would be weak side linebacker, which is what he said about being more complicated and there's more to learn from that aspect of it. So I think he's still going to be a hybrid player. Question is, how quickly can you get there, because he's not going to be available until August.
Yep, no doubt about it. Johnny Mac, let's go to the on the field stuff. Good comments from Victor. I'm sure we'll talk about it some more. We have two great guests coming up. We got Mike Gill, and we'll have Brandon Lee Gout in hour number 2. I want to welcome and thank everybody for being here this morning on Birds 365. Hit that like button for us. Drop your comments in the chat, and all super chats will be read today as well. Appreciate your guys' support. Johnny Mac, going on the field. No Devontae Smith again. A couple of other guys missed. Nothing too crazy or alarming there. A.J. Brown back out there, which is pretty awesome to see all this voluntary work. And you have some of the best players in the world showing up every single time. Lane Johnson was back out on the football field. Start there, John. Just any injury update and who missed the OTA. Not that it matters all that much. I don't think there's anybody to be overly concerned about when you miss an OTA, but still worth noting.
No, yeah. I mean, Devontae's, some people will take it in a negative direction, but he's one of the hardest workers on the team. There's no concern that he's not going to be in shape or anything like that. And it's already out there. He's been working out in Tampa with Ryan Williams, the great young Alabama receiver. So he's doing his work. He's just not doing it in Philadelphia. And there's some family things. And once you reach a certain status, like you say, AJ lives in the area now, and big family guy's not going anywhere. So you might as well go work out at the NovaCare complex.
Yeah, right.
Lane goes back and forth, and offensive line masterminds, which is his sort of off-season thing. They're getting ready for their thing after many camps down in Texas. So, guys, Fletcher Cox used to do that. He had a big ranch. He has a big ranch. They'd go home and then they come back. And if they're in their area, they show up. Yeah. And if not, they don't. They pop their head in, as Fletcher used to say.
Smitty might live back in Louisiana again, or wherever he might live. I'm not sure. He might not live in the area.
Well, he's in Tampa. A lot of guys live in Florida. I don't know where he lives in the off season.
He might live in Florida because of tax. I mean, I think
exactly.
He save a lot on tax there for 6 months. Yeah,
a lot of guys live in Florida or Texas because of tax purpose. When you make a lot of money, they take a lot of money. So
and there's actually some accounting hacks you can do there. If you have like 3 houses, I think you only have to be in Florida for 4 months to get full residency. So maybe he bought a little condo in Louisiana, a little condo in Philly, and a banger in Florida, and he saves like millions of dollars a year on taxes.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that go into it. But when you reach a certain status, and he's reached that status, I wouldn't worry about Devontae Smith at all. From the actual, a lot of positives. I mean, Landon Dickerson's already out there. That amazed me. Mm-hmm. I wasn't even looking for Landon at first, because you go to practice and the first thing you do is look for players who weren't there last time, and Landon wasn't there last time, and he's coming off season knee surgery, and I'm like, man, I don't even expect to see him. Now he might be on the sidelines. Because he lives in the area now. So, but he's out there with the first team offensive line. He's one of the toughest guys in the world, man. He's out there in June, and he doesn't have to be. So that's a big positive. Nolan Smith said he's getting closer to being cleared. Said he's almost ready to strike, he called it, which to me means probably clear for contact. But, and he said by next week. Now, they have the mandatory minicamp, but think about it. They're going to go from June 10th to they're probably going to start training camp July 21st, I'm guessing.
Right, late July.
Like, why would you go out there for one day? I think
that's the one thing I love about Nolan Smith, John. He really just seems like he loves life. He loves
I
loves
agree with that.
He loves it, man.
But sometimes you got to hold the player back. Like I'm saying from the Eagles' perspective, not Nolan's perspective, but from the Eagles' perspective, like I'm not clearing him for one day.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Risk versus reward. I don't know if the reward is there.
But, if they do, they do. They did it last year with Anaya Smith, now much lower profile, but he was coming off a surgery that impacted his draft status. And he was not able to go for the majority of the spring, and he went to mini camp and he was a go. So they've done it in the past, and there's the avenue of, well, if he's cleared, he's cleared, so it's possible. But I'm saying, me personally, and I'm not a doctor, I would be very cautious with Nolan Smith because I need Nolan Smith.
Yeah, and whenever a player talks about their own injury, you sometimes you have to play a little doctor because you don't know exactly what exactly the truth is there. John, any other takeaways from on the field? Did you have a chance to see the depth chart, John? And if you did anything jump out at you?
No, it was pretty similar. Dory Jackson, Caleb Ringo keep rotating opposite Quinyon Mitchell. Offensive line was more structured because most of the starters, the only starter, Cam Jurgens, he was there, but he's still rehabbing from back surgery. So was Mailata, Dickerson, Brett Toth, Tyler Steen, Lane Johnson, because Lane was back. So 4 of the 5, if you project Tyler Steen. So that was last week. There were 3 missing, so it was a big difference. They did blip, but again, Vic said don't take too much into the rotations at this point. They did start on the edge with Jalix Hunt and Patrick Johnson. Last week it was Jalix Hunt and Azeez Ojulari, but Big saying don't take much out of it. They rotate those guys a lot. And without Nolan, who's not working in team drills, he does some individual stuff. I talked about it last week. It looks very, very ominous on the edge without Nolan Smith. Jalix Hunt, Patrick Johnson, Azeez Ojulari, Josh Uche. Those were the first 2 teams, the first 2 groupings. So that's a little bit of a concern. But once Nolan comes back, he did talk a lot about Jalix Hunt. So that to me is a positive. So maybe he's ready in Vic's spine to take the big leap. And maybe that's what they're counting on.
Boy, if he takes a big leap, that would be an impressive draft pick last year, John. When he got selected, many people were like, "Who the heck? Why the heck? Why a project in the 3rd round?" Yeah. I mean, got going a little bit late in the year. I will say this, to your point, it still is a big projection. All right, to have Jalix Hunt being a huge contributor, I believe in it, but I do understand what belief in that comes with, and that's a lot of hope.
Sometimes opportunity is everything, because you talk yourself into, all right, this guy's a developmental project. We can't play this guy right away. And then you're forced to play him. And he's like, oh, he's a little bit better than we thought right away, just because he's got natural ability. And he probably is, learning on the job. Everybody looks at Davion Taylor as this bust, as a 3rd-round pick. He was a developmental. Well, they never gave him a chance. And when they did give him a chance, he actually played pretty well for 2 games and then got hurt. sometimes it's opportunity and just giving these guys a chance. And you got to suffer through some of the startup costs, like Jim Schwartz would say. They're going to make some mistakes, but if you're really gifted, and Jalen Hunt is really gifted, you kind of figure it out on the fly because you're a better athlete. So, I'm getting more optimistic about Jalen Hunt because they're going to give him the opportunity, and if they're willing to live with some of some of the learning curve, why not? Why not Jalen Hunt? I'd rather have Jalen Hunt than pay 30 plus million to a 30-plus-year-old edge rusher.
Yeah, I know. And the 30-plus-year-old guy might make you better in weeks 1 through 6, but where are you better, John, in January? That's my question. If you let Jalen Hunt go through the learning process of the year, similar to how it happened a year ago, similar to how it's happened many times for players, I think you have a bigger upside if Jalen Hunt comes through. Now, it's a big if, but
Well, I'm not going to say
I don't
bigger
know. I don't know.
upside than TJ Watt and Trey
Wow,
Hendrickson.
TJ Watt. No, I didn't mean that. I meant, Zadarius
Well, that's who I
Smith,
was
or somebody
talking
like
about.
that. Yeah.
But even as Zadarius Smith, I mean, he was a big time pass rusher for a long time in the NFL. If Jalen Hunt turns into Zadarius Smith, that's a win.
Yeah.
But yeah, at this stage, I'd much rather have Jalen Hunt. And I think Bick is enamored with him. So I think that's half the battle. As we saw with Bryce Up, if he's not enamored with you, that's half the battle. And then safety as well. That's going to be a rotation. And, he mentioned that's probably not going to be until he's not going to make the decision there until a couple preseason games. And that's Drew Makuba, Sidney Brown. He also threw in Tristan McCullum. So
McCullum did play last year when Gardner Johnson wasn't in there. So whether it was the injury to Sidney or not, McCullum did get time last year.
Yeah, he did. And yeah, he mentioned a few preseason games to sort out, and he specifically added Tristan because the question was about Cooper and Brown and their competition, and he specifically added McCullum. So that people should take notice, and even Lewis Seen is still getting a few first team reps. So they seem to be pretty open-minded on the competition there.
There you go. Good stuff there. Got to give a shout to Big Sills. He's been telling me about Tristan McCullum. I'm like, Tristan McCullum's not going to be out there. Vic Fangio throws him in. 2 super chats to get to. And then we got Mike Gill coming up here on Birds 365. We'll have Brandon Lee Goutman later on in the show. Second OTA wrapped up yesterday, and 6 of 6 will be tomorrow, but no media availability. So we will not have any update other than what the state media puts out. Jason Gates says $5. Good morning, guys. Do you think Dotson is going to be wide receiver 3? I saw something about us being projected to get Tyler Boyd. Just curious what you think. Go Birds. John, That sounds like a Bleacher Report.
I think it was Pro Football Network. I've seen that. Throw it in the circular pile, Jason. No, not happening. Jahan Dotson is the wide receiver 3. And the only reason that could potentially change, I've mentioned, the Eagles aren't going to be able to keep him long term. This is going to be his last year in Philadelphia.
Right.
So could they trade him down the road? Sure, but that would be most likely if somebody like Terrace Marshall stepped up and proved he can handle.
Yeah, or somebody offered a good deal for John.
I always love the trade stories, and like the Eagles need a receiver. What? The Eagles need a receiver.
Well, we have talked about here on the show the depth problem after those 2 guys. Now, I think it's better with Dotson, but it still does exist, right?
I think it's the best of the Nick Sirianni era. The question is, Danny Gray, people don't even know who he is. He's a legit NFL receiver. It'll be, to me, my concerns about the Eagles is how they build the roster. Like Johnny Wilson's here. Johnny Wilson missed OTAs. That's a little bit of a concern. I should have mentioned him. He's missed both days, which is weird.
Yeah, right.
But obviously he can block, but he can't do much as a receiver. Anaya Smith didn't have a good rookie season, part injury related. We'll see if he can rebound. And they kept him around because he was a draft pick. And so I didn't necessarily like the way they built it. Like Danny's a much better receiver than those guys. But sometimes you want other things. You want special teams ability. You want blocking ability for a run first offense like Johnny Wilson can provide. So it depends on what you want. But I think with Jahan Dotson, Danny Gray, they're better than they have been in the Nick Sirianni era when it comes to guys who can actually catch the football and somewhat. You can't replace A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith.
No. Yeah. No, I agree with that.
But
you
they're
can improve
somewhat,
the depth. You can improve the
they're
depth.
somewhat better equipped with those guys.
I agree. Last super chat here, then we'll get to Mike Gill. Kimberly Sirico. Kimberly, thank you for your support. She says, stay humble and hungry, a saying at Georgia. Enjoy the journey. Be where your feet are. Don't take anything for granted. Don't look forward. Don't look back. Nolan Smith. There you go. It's a good quote right there. It's a good quote.
Yeah, Nolan's, you can tell, he's got that positive athlete mentality. He is very hyper-focused on the process, getting better.
Right.
And that's the way he's taught. The Eagles have a lot of respect, obviously, for the way Kirby Smart runs that program. So
him too, and I'll also give a nod to Jalen Hurts, who talks about the process day in and day out all year long, 3 to 4 years now. He's been doing it even when they win, when they lose, when they suck, when they're great. Yeah, that's what Jalen wants to talk about. So I think that maybe some of that is permeated as well, which is a very positive thing. So good stuff there. Great opening breakdown here on the OTA. Johnny Mac was down there yesterday. I said it at the open, everybody. 92 days away from the banner drop for Eagles versus Cowboys on that opener, September 4th. So it's June 4th. But basically exactly 3 months. You got 92 days until the Eagles kick off the 2025 NFL season. It can't come soon enough. Let's get to Mike Gill right now, joining us on Birds 365. You can follow him everywhere at Mike Gill Show, including subscribing to his YouTube channel at Mike Gill Show and listen to him at 97.3 ESPN down the shore. Mike, welcome to the show, man. How you doing on this Wednesday?
Good morning, boys. What's happening?
Good morning, Mike, and I'll throw 97.5 on the weekend now. So got to give like 25 minutes to Mike's resume. So well done there. But Vic Fangio Day, my friend. What did you like? What was the headline for you in Vic Fangio?
Well, it's refreshing to hear someone actually be forthcoming, give you stuff, tell you things. I'm sure at the end of those things, the organization is like, yeah, come on, Vic, you don't have to give them all that stuff. I mean, there's a bunch there. Obviously, I think you guys were just talking about the safety situation. I guess we have a little bit of an answer of whether some starters are going to play in the preseason, because he kind of mentioned they're going to have to play in training camp and in the preseason game. So that safety position will be one to watch on the field, actually, for preseason games. The other one that might not be on the field for preseason games, I would imagine, is JAKIB Campbell, who will not be a part of training camp, and most likely mid-August, that could be the third preseason game, but are you just going to stick them right out there with 1 week of practice and say, hey, go play a preseason game? So I would imagine he doesn't play in a preseason game. Doesn't sound like Nakobe Dean will even be at training camp or any preseason games, and most likely not ready for the opener now, it seems like. So I think that was a bunch of stuff. If you take a look at that safety position again, you would also surmise that not only is it Sidney Brown, not only is it Drew Makuba and Tristan McCollum, but potentially you might see a little bit of Cooper DeJean. He mentioned him and safety twice yesterday.
Yeah.
So that was something that definitely stood out. And then, it seems like as of now, he's pretty happy with his edge rushing group of guys. I don't know how to read whether or not he's like, hey, I hope we get another guy, or is he legitimately, we're fine with what we have here? Because, that's how kind of how he ended the bite yesterday, which was, we're fine here, So, yeah, I mean, obviously a lot in that 15 minutes yesterday.
Yeah, man, Vic is a treasure. We have to protect him at all costs. He's the only pro football coach that I know that tells the truth. He just seems averse to lying to people, which I think others should try. I think it solves more issues than it creates, because one of the things, the Eagles are typically very closed off, and I even talked to some of the PR people there. I'm like, that creates speculation, is what that does. Now, we're speculating. Zander and I are here every day. We're forced to speculate, which I don't necessarily like doing at times, but I'm like, well, I think Jihad's not going to be back until, deep in the summer. I think, that's from Googling labrum surgery, and, the typical time frame to come back from that. But there's different levels of labrum surgery. There's more serious ones. Who knows is my point. Well, now you know. And Nakobe, same thing. He doesn't have, we've already, he's making backwards jumpers at the palestra, trick shots in basketball. He's got no brace on. He looks like he's doing well. He's doing ballet. He's talking like he's ahead of schedule. And Vic is like, he's probably not going to be there. Bang.
Yeah.
Speculation over, at least from my perspective.
I mean, I don't understand, well, you fall into a trap. For instance, the Sixers put out a statement that said Joel Embiid underwent surgery. He'll be reevaluated in 6 weeks. When you give a timeline, now it's been 8 weeks. So we haven't heard anything in the 2 weeks after you said speculation would be approximately 6 weeks. Is 8 weeks approximately 6? Or, so sometimes when you give a timeline and then you don't hold to it, you are now opening yourself for criticism of giving the timeline. So I'm sure the Eagles, when it comes to injuries, you throw out speculation. That's why you hear, 6 to 8 weeks. So that you have a little bit of buffer.
Well, I think you're right. You also don't want to put pressure on the player. But, I go back to the
because if you put it out there and now you're saying, well, if it's not, well, how come 6 weeks? Well, he had a setback. And the last thing you want to hear is, well, a setback. Yeah. Oh no, what happened?
Which I get the protection of the player part of it. But when Darren Sproles tore his hamstring, and I forget what year it was, he was out for like 9 weeks. But the Eagles never told anybody he actually tore his hamstring. We all thought it was this normal hamstring injury. And sure enough, it popped up as 4 weeks became 5. Fans are like, what is he doing? Why is he not back? Why is he not back? Why is he not back? If they would have said it was a torn hamstring, it's easier to understand. To me, honesty is always the best policy. And then you go back up, and if something does happen and the player isn't ready, you can say, there's so much misinformation. Like Bryce Huff, Vic was talking about that last year. He can't use his hand. He can't use his arm.
Let me ask you this question. If the Eagles were aware that Campbell would miss all this time, would he still have been the pick? Like, did they anticipate this?
Oh, yeah. They knew he wasn't going to be.
Like, did they anticipate that he would not be prepared to be at training camp? That's all.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It was Howie said draft night. This is long term.
Okay. Well, and I only ask that because it now appears that Dean, I mean, he gave no timeline on him. The time seems like it's so far out that he didn't even have a time frame to speculate on. So it would tell me, I could be wrong, you would know better than me, John, that Dean would not be ready to play on opening night.
No, I would be very surprised if he's ready to play on opening night.
Right. So you have a possibility then that you are starting the season with Jeremiah Trotter Jr. in that spot. I mean, if you're saying he's mid-August, okay, if there's a little bit of a setback or he's not quite ready in mid-August, are you going to put the guy out in the field opening night against the Cowboys with no training camp and no preseason games? Maybe. That would be kind of interesting.
Yeah, I doubt it. I would, if I'm a betting man, and I'm not, but yeah, I bet on Trotter. to be the week 1 starter opposite Zach Ball at all-ball linebacker. Again, short term, hopefully from the Eagles' perspective, but also an opportunity for Jeremiah Trotter Jr. because when you do get on the field, if you play well, nobody's taking you off the field. So from that standpoint, he's got an opportunity.
The Eagles linebacking core went from the worst in football before last season to the Phillies starting rotation where we don't know who to take off out of it.
Hey, as Vic kind of explained when he was asked about the hybrid nature, potential nature of Jihad Campbell, much more difficult to learn the linebacker position than just go get the quarterback. The easiest way to get Jihad on the field early, losing my voice, is just go point at the quarterback. Go get him.
Right.
That's the easiest way to get him as a situational player early in his career who didn't have much training camp. That's the easiest way to get him involved early. So that might be the way it shakes out.
Yeah, and Campbell has the potential versatility to do that where, they could use him in other capacities, which was another thing that Vic talked about yesterday, the whole Huff thing. He explained, the hand, and then he couldn't use the hand, and then he got hurt and missed the time. But we think we're okay. And he specifically mentioned Nolan Smith, Jalen Hunt taking the snaps and getting more of an opportunity once Graham and Huff were out of the picture. I mean, people forget Huff did play about 300 snaps last year, so he was blocking Hunt and Graham being there. We're blocking Smith and Hunt. So you're looking back and saying, well, these guys came on in the second half. Well, they weren't getting as much opportunity in the first half of the season because Huff invisibly was there. I mean, he wasn't doing much, but he was getting the snaps that those guys weren't getting. And then he threw in Uche and Ojulari as guys that, hey, we think we're okay there. So you could always throw Campbell into that mix too at some point.
By the way, Vic also started going down the list, and then he said the other guys, which is bad news for KJ Henry and O'Shawn Mathis. The other guys,
yeah. No doubt. Mike, what'd you think of what Vic had to say about Cooper DeJean? Kind of talked about him as a Swiss Army knife in a way. Basically, hey, he can play safety, he can play outside corner. We want him at inside corner though, and nickel. What'd you think of that comment? Kind of shows you that they really believe Cooper DeJean can be maybe play all 5 positions in that secondary.
Yeah, and Cooper DeJean, it seems to be a guy that they're throwing a lot on this guy's plate, right? As much as he's taken on this offseason, they're throwing that much on his plate. He's here, there, everywhere. And when he gets to the building, they're saying, well, here's a lot more for you to go study. And it's interesting. It's like, when they mentioned him, they mentioned the word safety in him twice yesterday. Outside corner, something we've heard a little bit about. He mentioned, I think it might have been you, John, answering how many times did they play base last year? That little exchange. So they're just saying, we want this guy on the field no matter what our defense is. Base, dime, nickel, you name it. We want him playing. We want him on the field. We don't want a scenario where there's a defense that we call and then he has to come off the field. So if we only have 4 D-backs, he's one of the 4. If we have 5, he might not be in the same spot. If we go to 6, he might change spots there. It's pretty evident that they want Cooper DeJean on the field at all times. And I think that's what eventually Campbell hopefully evolves into, where they can use him as a linebacking edge rusher version of what Cooper DeJean is for the secondary. We want you on the field somewhere in all capacities. So obviously they have a lot of expectations that Cooper can really be a difference maker. And remember, they're losing a guy that had 6 interceptions last year. So they need someone that can attack the ball. Cooper obviously showed that he could be a guy like that in the Super Bowl. Now I think they want to give him more opportunity to do that and be around the ball.
And by the way, the answer was 160 times the Eagles were in their base defense last year, which my next question to Vic off camera, which I've already said, is why is it still called base?
160 times for your base defense.
I'll tell you
that
why.
is the stupidest thing ever.
Their base defense is the nickel. That's their base defense.
Right.
Where they were played 70% of the time in nickel. How many snaps did they have in nickel compared to 160?
Because now I haven't played Madden football in quite some time, but you used to have to pick: do you want to play a 3-4 or a 4-3?
Yeah. Well,
so
that's
for the video game to be able to for the video game to be able to give you an option. You have to say it's a 4-3 or a 3-4.
I'm just saying you should say nickel is base now, not base. When you
unless you're playing the Eagles, who only roll out, 2 receivers and hand the ball off.
Well, offense is different. Yeah, the offense, it's
No, but I'm saying if you're playing the Eagles, the other team's defense, they probably have to be in base a lot more because the Eagles run the ball so often.
Yeah, a little bit. I wouldn't say a lot more. They should be a lot more, by the way. But, that's a give and take. You saw it in the Super Bowl. You do everything to stop Saquon Barkley, and then you're running one-on-one with A.J. Brown. Good luck with that. And Devontae Smith as well. So that's sort of the complications the Eagles pose to opposing defenses. We haven't talked a lot about the quarterback. The quarterback has been very sharp this spring. Jalen Hurts, especially when compared to last spring, where he looked out of sorts. But last year ended up pretty well, to say the least. But his comfort level is just off the charts. He threw a go route to Dallas Goedert that was unbelievable yesterday. And Dallas outside shoulder. And Dallas Goedert, boy, he's the most underrated player on the Eagles. Made an unbelievable catch. What do you make of that comfort level of Jalen Hurts?
I was trying to think of a comparison of Hurts as a player who is an MVP candidate, a Super Bowl champion, yet questioned. Like, this guy's always winning. I mean, is it like a Derek Jeter, where if Jeter doesn't have all these champions and he was just Derek Jeter, the player, is he a Hall of Fame level player? If he doesn't play for the Yankees and you just looked at Derek Jeter's stats, would you say he's a Hall of Famer?
Well, as a Yankee fan, I think
Jeter's a Hall of Famer.
Hold on. If Derek Jeter had the same career and he played for the Kansas City Royals and essentially won no World Series, are you saying that was a Hall of Fame shortstop?
Yeah, if Michael Jordan played for the Hornets,
that's a bad comparison. Take that. He's got the 6th
This
most
is a compliment to both of them, by the way. Jeter excelling in New York, winning World Series is the reason why he's Derek Jeter.
The only reason, if you get 3,465 hits in Kansas City, you're a Hall of Famer. There's 5 guys in the history of baseball that have more hits than Derek Jeter.
I'm not disagreeing.
Like, you could have went a lot of directions with that. You went the wrong way when you chose Derek Jeter.
I think my point is this. I think Jeter being in New York elevated him from maybe an all-star level player to a superstar level player. The World Series championships put him on another plane. But I don't think people look at him and say, like,
well, they should. Pete Rose.
But that's my point. That's my point.
Ty Cobb, Hank Aaron, Stan Musial, Tris Speaker. That's it.
That's my point. They should with Jalen Hurts. But for whatever reason, it's like, I don't know. Well, it's only because this offense is so good. Look at the players around him, all that stuff. Like, there's always an excuse as to why we don't want to say that, and you're talking about his comfort level. This guy is just cool. Like, Jeter was just cool, man. He didn't need, it didn't matter to him. It was like I'm the shortstop of the New York Yankees. We're winning World Series, whatever. That's Jalen Hurts. I mean, he is just on an even plane, and I feel like everybody's evaluation of him is based on some antiquated eye test of he doesn't have the arm, he doesn't have the size, he doesn't have this. He's just a winner. And I guess your point is you could have put Derek Jeter in Kansas City and he would have been an MVP. It wouldn't have mattered if the World Series were attached to him or not. So,
well, he'd be a Hall of Famer. He wouldn't have the high profile. I agree with that. But yeah, if you're getting 3,465 hits in Sheboygan, you're going to be in the Hall of Fame. So, I mean, but you're right as far as the status and all
I would ask how many people realize that Derek Jeter even had that many hits.
Well, that's their fault.
I'm just saying, but like, I don't know that if you had like Derek Jeter, like there was a lot of people who criticized his defense, especially later on in the game.
Late in his career. Yeah.
It wasn't a great shortstop. Didn't have a lot of power. A lot of people look at, well, how many home runs did he have? Not a big power guy. Didn't hit a lot of home runs. He just was a winner. And yes, he had the hits, but I don't think people recognize him as one of the all-time great hitters.
Well, they should.
I understand that. But I think the thing is they view him more as this World Series champion.
I think there's, when you have, it's the same thing with, and the Eagles are getting this now. You have some people, believe me, this was a big week for Saquon Barkley with the Saquon stuff and the EA Sports and the 99 Club. Believe me, there's a lot of people who dislike the Philadelphia Eagles that are sick of Saquon Barkley. There's some jealousy attached to it. There's a lot of jealousy attached to it. That's just the nature of winning. So when you win, you have a whole group of people. Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. Same thing happens to them. There's a lot of pushback to successful people. Cal Ripken, same thing happened to Cal Ripken as Derek Jeter, because as he got older, like human beings, they sort of fall off. And especially defensively, you remember Cal Ripken had to move from shortstop to third base because he had no range anymore. And that part happens. But yeah,
I mean, forget, by the way, that Jalen Hurts is only 26 years old as you're telling us about some of these aging players.
Yeah, Jalen's still in the prime of his career. And I think he's going to have a better season. Now, that does not mean the Eagles win the Super Bowl again. I think individually he's set up for a better season.
Let me ask you guys this, because John, you talked about how Jalen seems more comfortable coming into this time of the year right now. Do you guys, and I don't say this with disrespect, I'm just asking about the circumstance. Do you guys think Jason Kelce really slowed down Jalen Hurts, taking that next step as a quarterback, reading the line of scrimmage, doing all the things? I mean, John, we bring up on this show all the time that famous Brady clip. The most important thing a quarterback does is basically what he does pre-snap. Jalen didn't handle that much until Jason Kelce left. Do you think that slowed him down a lot, or am I putting too much into that?
No, I've talked about that a lot. Yeah, I think it's fair. The Eagles just that was the way. Carson went through it. Jason did it. Didn't matter who the quarterback was. They didn't even.
Was that a Jason thing or was that a team thing?
That was a team
question.
That was a team thing. They just, had so much, and rightfully so. And there's a give and take. Yes. It stunts the quarterback's development from a I think so.
Yeah. I think anytime that you're taking anything that the quarterback has to process and be a part of and saying that somebody else is going to do it for you, that's an element. I mean, that's something that all of it is encompassing. And if you're not doing that, and it's something that you ultimately should be doing, you're going to be stunned a little bit on that. And the fact that you had the center calling these things out for you, you might have seen it differently than him, right? I mean, ultimately, and that doesn't mean the center is right or wrong or indifferent, or the quarterback's right and wrong or indifferent. It's just different of how they're seeing what they're seeing out there.
Well, the other thing to say, and again, I don't mean this with
Kelce was right, but I digress.
Well, they did become the best. I mean, many on this show, John, including you, have said last year's offensive line might have been the best offensive line in Eagles history, and they've had a lot of good offensive lines, and that's 1 year removed from a Hall of Fame center. Now, I'm not saying it's a knock on Kelce, but I'm saying I wonder if those two things tie in together a little bit.
Well, from Jalen's perspective, I do think that he was, and he's talked about it, he was craving the ability for more autonomy,
Right.
and it certainly impacted him. I don't think there's any doubt about it. But I do think, you're talking about no center in the history of football has won a Super Bowl and made 6 All-Pros. You're talking about a Hall of Fame, no doubt about, slam dunk player who was unbelievably smart and unbelievably adept at doing that particular job. And the Eagles made an organizational decision that impacted every quarterback pretty much from the second half of his career on. And they weren't changing. And I don't blame either side. I don't blame the Eagles for not changing. I don't blame Jalen Hurts for craving it. But yeah, it's a silver lining to, as far as the best offensive line, I think that had more to do with Mekhi Becton and his impact. I think that had more to do with Jordan Mailata turning into perhaps the best left tackles. He's continued to get better and better and better. And as good as Cam Jurgens is, and Cam's a very good player, he's not Jason Kelce.
No. And also Landon, to your point. I mean, I think
Landon keeps getting better, and better.
He's vicious, man. He's fun to watch.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. I did wonder that though about Jalen Hurts. I mean, last year, for all the issues or for lack of a better word, that they did have in the passing game, it was his first year doing everything at the line of scrimmage. How much will that change moving forward?
Even now, he didn't do everything. There's a give and take between him and Cam.
Yeah, but a bigger
bigger part
of the responsibility.
Definitely a bigger part of it. And there was an opening, and that was the silver lining to give him a little bit more autonomy, because I think it helps him just from keeping him involved in the game. I think that alone. But there's a lot of, I always, one of my biggest problems with Chip Kelly, and there's a lot of things about Chip Kelly's back in the NFL now with Las Vegas, but, when he was here, I think in hindsight, he brought a lot of great things to the NFL, a lot of things that people use today that he doesn't get credit for about sort of starting it. But boy, I thought he was headstrong when it came to, like, I had always said it. If you're an offensive mind and you're not craving a quarterback like Tom Brady or Peyton Manning, who can do everything from the line of scrimmage, Aaron Rodgers as well, what are you doing? Like, your ego's that big? That's my biggest problem I have with Chip Kelly. And, you should be, as an offensive coach, you should always be striving to get a quarterback like that. And yeah, you shouldn't just default to the center if you have a quarterback like that. Now, I'm not going to compare Jalen Hurts to Tom Brady. I'm sorry, people. I'm not. So, it's easier said than done to find Tom Brady or Peyton Manning, but you should be craving it. Your ego should not be that big as a play caller and offensive mind to not want a quarterback like that. That always bothered me about Chip Kelly, who was more of just run what I say.
Right. Just run what I say.
Yeah.
The 4 plays I designed.
Exactly. Well, his whole philosophy was about tempo and being in better shape. And, and you don't have 90, 100 players in the NFL. And you got some veterans who were like Jason Peters, who's like, come on, dude, what are you trying to do? Run him into the ground? Yeah. So it didn't work. But anyway, I digress. Jalen has been very sharp, though. So that's a positive. What do you think of, we were talking about the wide receiver depth, Mike. Obviously, AJ, Devontae hasn't been there. He's down in Tampa working out. AJ does individual work, but doesn't really work in team drills. So you've seen a lot of Anaya Smith, Terrace Marshall, Jahan Dotson. I think because the Eagles' top 2 receivers are so good, people look at that and say the depth isn't good enough.
Yeah.
I even throw Danny Gray in there because I think he's talented. I think this is the best depth they've had in the Nick Sirianni era. where there have been some bad
no question.
receivers.
Well, the first year they were, you had Devontae as a rookie and just nothing, and then you got AJ here. But yeah, I agree. I mean, Dotson, I think just didn't get enough opportunity. He comes here, you throw him into the offense in the middle of training camp. I mean, I would imagine now that he's kind of get his feet under him. He knows the offense. He knows his role better. You would probably have a little bit bigger of a role. He showed last year making a couple plays that when it was necessary to make a play, obviously in the playoffs, he made a couple big plays. But yeah, Dotson was a guy that people were excited about when they got him. They just didn't need him. They just didn't use him. I mean, there was like no role for him in the offense. And it was like, it's some of those times where it's like you can only have so many good players, and then when the guy is not the player that you thought you were getting, because you're like, this guy was the first round pick, and then he doesn't, this guy stinks. It's not that he stinks. He just doesn't really have very many opportunities. Can you make the most of the opportunities when they come your way? And I think Dotson showed he can. I think Marshall is an interesting has an interesting opportunity to make an impact on this team here. He had a pretty good run in Carolina early. He's kind of faded off since, but they're definitely, as you mentioned, I think it's the most talented group of guys that they have. And now that Dotson will be here for the full training camp, he should have a much better understanding of his role. And they have a much better understanding of him now too. Okay, how much can we give this guy? Now we know. Last year you're getting this guy and you're like, I don't know. We're going to throw him out there and, well, I got AJ and Devontae. We'll just kind of have – now he should be much better and much more comfortable in the role that he has. And I'm interested in Marshall. Anais Smith, he has trouble catching the ball consistently. Johnny Wilson's more of a big blocking type of guy, so I'm sure they'll have packages for him. But, yeah, I agree with you that there's definitely more depth and talent just by knowing the situation better. Dotson should be much better this year. That doesn't mean his stats are going to be eye-popping. I warn you.
Could Johnny Wilson be on the outs? I could see him not making the team this year.
I would think Anais would be in more trouble than Johnny, because Johnny at least
is in trouble too. Yeah,
Johnny at least has a package you could use for him. Those bubble screens.
Yeah, and the running offense. I mean, the big body helps.
Yeah. He helps in the blocking, but he's not been there. That
been there. And John, you're telling me there's good depth there. Danny Gray and a couple of these other guys. So maybe they don't have the roster spot.
Well, again, it depends what you want. Like if you want just a receiver, a guy who's going to catch the ball, a guy who's going to threaten the defense. Danny Gray runs I think he ran a 4.33 coming out, so he's explosive. He had a drop in both. So he's one of those guys. He caught like 5-6 passes yesterday.
I'll tell you this, I won't lose sleep at night for the running game if Johnny Wilson is not retained. Now, I know he might help it a little bit, or he might have that skill set, but I won't be losing sleep if Johnny Wilson's not there to help Saquon Barkley.
It's just a matter of what you want as a team. And again, who you think you can get through to the practice squad, that factors into it as well. Do you think somebody would claim Johnny Wilson off waivers? That might keep his job. Yeah, you never know. I mean, the Eagles have kept the Eli Ricks around for 2 years because they thought somebody would claim him.
That's a different situation. I mean, secondary help everybody's looking for. I feel like these things are very regionalized. You're like, this guy's been on a team. He's on, off, on, off. How come no one else is picking up this guy? It's like there's certain areas where, like,
definitely. Yeah, most guys, and you're right about corner. I think last year, specifically Carolina was claiming everybody. So if you had a corner who played even a little bit, they claimed him.
For instance, the very famous Paul Turner, this guy's ripping it up in training camp, and then the Eagles cut him. No one else ever picked him up. I mean, it wasn't like, when the Eagles had Greg Ward on, off, no one else ever stepped in and took him. So it's like, you have these guys like, you can't give them up. The other teams will take them. Greg Ward was on and off this team 50 times. Not one team had any interest in picking him up. They have their own version of Greg Ward. Everybody has their own versions of these guys who kind of excel in their training camps, and they like them. So they don't need to go get your version of Johnny Wilson or Greg Ward. They have their own version of
right. It. God bless my old co-host, Jody McDonald. I had to talk him up the Greg Ward clip for many years. Nice guy. But now that people in Philadelphia have seen dominant NFL receivers, you see the difference.
See, this is an interesting, like, I think the redeeming quality of this is where it's like, is it hurt or help? The redeeming quality of Ward was that he was an outstanding quarterback in college who became a receiver, who became a dependable receiver on a team that wasn't very good.
No.
So the
and
fact that he was a
and he
quarterback,
caught the football. He had very good hands, and
right,
nobody caught the football for the Eagles.
But the fact that he was a quarterback in college who was pretty well known, like a lot of times you get a quarterback who comes into the league and you're like, I don't remember this guy, but Ward was a pretty well-known college quarterback who then became a receiver. I think that kind of added to like the athleticism that he could play quarterback, he could play receiver, he catches the ball. That made him a little bit more of a fan favorite, was this whole encompassing thing. It would have been akin to like, maybe not. I mean, Tim Tebow was, but like if Tim Tebow actually excelled at playing tight end, God forbid, the fact that he actually caught the ball playing tight end, people would have been like, you got to play this guy.
Well, Braxton Miller, remember Braxton Miller? He was here
for
a very short time. Great quarterback at Ohio State. Changed to receiver right away. Pretty much drafted as a receiver.
Who's the kid in the UFL? Dean Cain right now. Who wasn't he with the Eagles for
Deion Cain?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was a Clemson kid, wasn't he? Deion Cain?
Yeah.
Good stuff. All right, Mike, we appreciate you joining in today, brother. As always on a Wednesday. What do you got in the docket coming up, brother, on the Mike Gill show coming up from 2 to 6 today on 97.3 ESPN?
Well, we got a lot of the OTA recap stuff. We'll be doing football at 4 today and talking some more Eagles. Definitely the Phillies busted out last night. So
it was good.
4-game losing streak is over. Rejoice. Yeah. Everything is back to, the minutia of a long baseball season. Also, here's a question. I know it's not a basketball show, but tomorrow night, the Indiana Pacers will play in the NBA Finals. Tyrese Halliburton. If 2 years ago I gave you the chance to pick Tyrese Halliburton or Tyrese Maxey, which Tyrese would you take? And I know the answer that everybody watching would give me. And now they're all saying, you got to take the other Tyrese. Could this Tyrese be that?
Well, I mean,
Tyrese?
you think about the potential Ben Simmons trade, which Halliburton would have came here.
Yep. But I think most people would have answered, I would take Tyrese Maxey over Tyrese Halliburton. Probably at the beginning of this year. At the beginning of this year.
But they don't know Tyrese Halliburton. That's the thing. You talked about very regional, and Tyrese Maxey played very well. But one of the things that I warn, there's a lot of development with Halliburton over the years, and the Sixers have not been known for their player development for the most part. So that factors into it as well. It becomes here, he doesn't necessarily turn into the same player.
True.
That he has been. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. But when you see that in hindsight, they could have had him in a Ben Simmons trade, and the Sixers were like, nah, we don't need that. But, you can play that game. Like Jalen Brunson was the 33rd pick. I mean, everybody
the Sixers had the 26th pick that year and took Landry Shamet, by the way. And the Sixers had the 10th pick that year and took Bridges. The next pick at 11 was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Yeah.
He would have looked pretty good.
If you go all the way back to Giannis.
I don't need to go that far. If I would have had
enough Sixers. They get me fired up. You guys got me fired up now. Mike, thank you for joining, brother. We appreciate it, man.
Thanks, bud.
There's Mike Gill joining us here on Birds 365. Follow him at Mike Gill Show all over the map. Great stuff by him there, and he'll be on later today, this afternoon. John, I'm going to take no commercial break here, and we'll get right into another conversation that I wanted to have here about the OTAs. You brought it up to Mike Gill. We didn't have a chance to talk about it in the open, but Jalen Hurts seems to be looks very sharp at practice. There was a report of the big throw yesterday to Dallas Goedert, dropped it right in the bucket over the shoulder. You said he's looked in control, confident, and good overall at OTAs. What have you seen from QB1? Give the people an update, John. He is the most important man on the football team.
Just comfort. I think there's that narrative, and it's going to be there for the entire year probably, but another change at offensive coordinator and play caller to Kevin Patullo. But, I mean, This is not the same as last year, and last year worked out anyway. So I don't know why that's going to continue to be a narrative, but it will. I know that. So he looked tremendously shaky last spring and uncertain with legitimately new terminology and things like that. And the Eagles were also trying to do a bunch of things in the spring and dumping the football off, which he's typically not, what he wants to do, just dump it off to the running back. A lot of motion, trying to bring the Kellen Moore concepts in before they scaled it back. Just was uncomfortable. And now, the Eagles call it the Eagles offense. I know you called it the Jalen Hurts offense. It always ends up in the same place. So
Right.
It's starting in the same place. And I think not that they're not trying to improve on certain things. They have thrown underneath stuff. Yesterday, that big whole period devoted to getting the tight ends involved, which I can't remember seeing in the past. Sure, it's happened, but I can't remember it offhand. Sometimes remember they have 6 of these things. We only get to see 2 of them. So they might have done it last year and we weren't there that day, which is probably more, but this is the first time I've seen it. And it just looks comfortable. And that was not the case last year. And by the way, they won the Super Bowl last year, so it didn't even matter. But I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing.
So, John, last time the Eagles lost an offensive coordinator to a job promotion was after Shane Steichen, and they hired from within. I don't think it failed as much as they made it seem like it failed, but it failed. He was fired and let go after the following season. That was Brian Johnson. Then they went outside the building, brought in Kellen Moore. The rest is history. Obviously, won a Super Bowl. This year, they went back to the promote from within. Well, do you think they made the right decision this time around? Seems like they did so far.
Yeah, I think they did. And I don't look at Brian Johnson as a failure. And I know people,
I don't at all. But some people will.
I know people look at that and balk, and because what the Eagles did, and they fired him essentially. But to me, that's you can't do this, but I wonder if the timing worked out. And Vic Fangio was the defensive coordinator in 2023. What would have happened with that same offense?
Right.
And I think it would have been
much better. I don't know if they would have been as good as last year because they didn't have.
No, I'm saying, they started 10-1 even with it. I don't think you have the collapse. I'm not saying they win the Super Bowl. I'm not saying they're number 1, but the whole landscape shifts.
Yeah, the defense wouldn't have been 30th overall or whatever they were.
The whole landscape shifts and it has nothing to do with the offense. Nothing. To me, the entirety of that collapse was on the defense. Entirety of it.
Yeah, I mean the offense was 8th ranked overall. I mean, I don't know what more. I get it. You can have great desires of being top 5, but Brian Johnson objectively did a pretty damn good job. I mean, I know he was scapegoated, but I don't.
Yeah, that's number 8 with DeAndre Swift, not Saquon Barkley.
Right.
Yeah,
I hope Brian Johnson gets another. I think he will, but I hope he does.
If Vic was here that year and the timing worked out, I believe Brian Johnson would already be a head coach in the NFL.
Yep. Now he's back to a quarterback's coach, right? In Washington.
No, he's
he's offensive assistant, or
he is I believe assistant head coach and passing game coordinator. I have to look it up. The titles are outrageous in the NFL.
Dude, there's so many. I mean, when we first talked about that, I'm like, all right, John, I kind of followed, and now that I've been in it, it's just like, oh my God, the titling, the names of everything.
Well, look at
HD, yeah.
You look at Kevin Patullo's job. He's the assistant head coach, pass game coordinator, and with Commanders. But Kevin Patullo's job title last year. Now, if you said to a novice and trying to explain football to them, he was the associate head coach passing game coordinator. Associate head coach passing game coordinator. And you said, now he's the offensive coordinator. You'd say, oh, he got demoted. No, he didn't get demoted. He got promoted. Yeah, it's silly. It's silly.
It's very silly. But the good news here on this conversation is that Jalen Hurts looks sharp at practice. Walk us through that big play yesterday, John. Apparently it was the play of the day. You wrote that it stole the show in the article. Just give us an inside look.
Yeah,
John.
man.
Give a little play-by-play from John McMullen.
It's a go route. Yeah, Jalen could throw those go routes. I remember that back and forth we had. I forget what game it was, but I said, you seem to have a knack for that deep ball. And he pushed back at me and said, yeah, that's whatever he said. That's not what they say. And I said, who's they? I said.
I remember that. I
just said, you really have a knack for it. And then he said, thank you. But yeah, I mean, he and I talked about it last year before the Super Bowl, and it worked brilliantly. He's got a real knack for throwing that particular pass. And, typically it's AJ or even Devontae, but, they were working this tight end heavy drill, as I mentioned, and they were specifically trying to get the tight ends matched up, outside with linebackers. And, they got Dallas on Zach Bond, who carried him pretty well down the field, but Jalen put a throw on the outside shoulder exactly where it's supposed to be. It's a difficult catch as well, so Dallas deserves credit because he's, looking over his head, and he dropped it right in the bucket for a big play down the field, 30, 35 yards, whatever it was. But, yeah, I mean, he's got an unbelievable knack for dropping that football in on that particular throw. And you normally don't see it with the tight ends, but you got to see it with Dallas Goedert. He's an impressive player as well. Yeah, I can't even believe the Eagles went down that route, but it worked out, so it doesn't matter. And yeah, he's been, now most of it has been underneath stuff, and most of it has been checked down. So you see his completion percentage is probably like 95%. The ball never hits the ground with him or Tanner McKee. The only time the ball hit the ground yesterday, there was a pass breakup by Mac McWilliams, which was a pretty nice play on the great Harrison Bryant. Sorry, JD. Maybe 2 or 3 incompletions from Jalen, maybe 2 or 3 from Tanner. And then Dorian Thompson-Robinson did not look good. And Kyle McCord looked much better in very few reps. You get very few reps when you're down that low.
Dorian's probably going to be gone, right?
Yeah, I mean, they could probably get him on the practice squad if they want to keep 4.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they're not
cutting. The third emergency quarterback isn't going to be Dorian. It's probably going to be McCord, you think?
Unless Clayton Thorson's it, and he's not. I mean, you already see he carries himself like an NFL quarterback, is how I describe Kyle McCord. Not saying he's going to be great, but he made a couple nice throws yesterday. And he seems very confident, more of a pocket style passer, obviously. Very confident for a young player. Yeah, he's gonna pass DRT pretty quickly, I think.
Yeah, John, I know you said you don't like to speculate on this show, actually, or project, but what do you think? Like Hurts, what do you think the season's going to look like for him?
I think he's going to have a better season, but I don't really think it's going to be close. One, I don't think he played that well last season, so I'm on an island there. I think it was arguably his worst season as a starting quarterback over not the final 2 games, over the entire season. So I think he's going to go back to what he normally is, which was at a higher level. and probably, experience, comfort, probably get even a little bit better than that. And I think he's on track to have his best personal season in his career. And guess what? They might not win the Super Bowl, and that's possible. But, again, if your only gauge is did he win the Super Bowl or not, well, then I'm probably going to have to lean he's going to have a worse season, but that's not how I evaluate quarterbacks.
No,
I think
yeah, I don't either.
I think he's going to be a better player this upcoming season.
Good stuff there on Jalen Hurts. Big throw to Dallas Goedert yesterday. So good to have Goddard back in the mix. Good stuff here. We got Brandon Lee Gouton coming up in about 3 minutes here on Birds 365. We haven't taken a commercial break, so I'm going to hit the commercial break right now. Appreciate all of you guys being here this morning on a Wednesday edition of Birds 365. We've had great viewership all throughout the offseason, and that continues here today. So we appreciate each and every one of you. Hit that like button for me. What are we at? We're at 82 likes. Can we get to 100 before the break is over in 3 minutes? We'll be right back on Birds 365 in 3 minutes.
Welcome to the Jet Setters and the High Rollers, to the Shot Takers and the Tastemakers. Welcome to the Viewfinders, the Thrill Seekers, and the Night Owls. Welcome to everything you could possibly want on one 5-mile island. Welcome to the Wildwoods. Book your stay today.
The following is a real testimonial from the father of a young injured victim.
I didn't think she was going to make it.
Major Perry's daughter was the victim of a horrific accident caused by someone else's negligence.
If you don't find the right counselor, law firm that you're looking for, you will get lost in the wilderness.
Badly injured? Call the Fritz and Bianculli Law Firm at 215-458-2222 and find out why they say, "We got this."
In our hometown, we all look out for each other. We go the extra mile to lend a helping hand. We step up to keep our communities going strong. And at Independence Blue Cross, we're here to keep you going strong. We've been deeply rooted in our communities for more than 85 years. And that connection to members has earned us our spot as the #1 health insurer in the region. So while you look out for your neighbors, know IBX is always looking out for you.
Your financial future is on the line. Are you ready for what's next? At Leone & Company Wealth Management, we help young professionals, business owners, and pre-retirees navigate the complexities of building and protecting wealth. For young professionals, we'll help you grow your wealth, plan for your future, and make the most of your hard-earned dollars. For business owners, we provide strategies to protect your company, manage risks, and create a lasting legacy for both your business and personal wealth. For pre-retirees, we'll design a plan to secure your retirement, ensuring you can live comfortably and confidently in your next chapter. Whether you're just starting out, managing a thriving business, or preparing for retirement, we're here to help you take control of your financial future. The first consultation is on us. Get the advice you need without the cost. Let's make your financial vision a reality. Take the next step. Scan the QR code to schedule your free consultation today. And of course, go Birds.
Welcome to the Jet Setters and the High Rollers, to the Thrill Seekers and the Night Owls. Welcome to everything you could possibly want on one 5-mile island. Welcome to the Wildwoods. Book your stay today.
EAGLES. Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to a Wednesday edition of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports. I'm your host, Zander Krause. That's my co-host, Johnny Mack, John McMullen, the #1 Eagles beat reporter. Give us follows on X at Real Zander and at JF McMullen. We're going to be joined by Brandon Lee Gouton in a couple of minutes here. Let me just make sure BLG is all good. got him everything sent. So he should be joining us here in shortly on the show. But John, any other takeaways from the OTA that we didn't hit on at the start? We only had 25 minutes before we got to Mike Gill. Normally we run on things for 45 minutes to an hour. Anything we missed in the open? Obviously, Vic Fangio said a whole lot. And then the on-the-field stuff. I know we talked a little bit about the depth chart and stuff, but anything else that we missed that we didn't address on here on Birds 365?
Well, I think we hit all the major points. I do think the Trotter stuff has become more important, at least early in the season. See if he can take that step forward and be Oren Burks-like, for lack of a better comparison, and step in and hold down the fort, at least until Nakobe and or Jihad Campbell can get involved. I did ask Vic, if Nakobe and is not there, would Zach play Mike linebacker, be the middle? And he said probably, essentially. So that's probably the way it's going to go. And that puts a little bit more on Zach Bond's plate, but that's what happened last year as well. And he handled it just fine. So, in theory, it might take away from some of the playmaking ability, but that wasn't the case in the playoffs. Dude made a play every stinking week. It was unbelievable.
Yep.
But a little bit more on his plate. And yeah, I think it's going to be a big Jeremiah Trotter Jr. summer. The Eagles got to get him ready to play at least early in the season.
Yep, we'll see how it all shakes out. We got BLG set to join us now here on Birds 365. We got Mike Gill's takeaways. We got Johnny Mac's takeaways at the Open. Let's go to Brandon Lee Gouton right now from Bleeding Green Nation. You can follow him on X at Brandon Gouton and read all his work at bleedinggreennation.com. BLG, welcome to the show, man, on this Wednesday edition post-OTA. How you doing, brother?
Yeah, always especially glad to be here when there is
Actual,
real stuff to talk about.
Yeah, actual, real. Well, we can't call it real football, but they were out on the field.
The Eagles always give us something, even when there's nothing.
Yeah. And Vic Fangio, they're still overshadowed because it was Vic Fangio day pre-practice. So before we get to the practice, and I want to talk about, well, I'll start there and we'll say Vic, because I was just talking before you came on, BLG. In my estimation, Jalen Hurts has looked very comfortable, which is a stark contract from last spring where he was kind of out of sorts. Now everything worked out well last year, but I think Jalen Hurts is going to have one of his best seasons, maybe his best season. I just think he's more comfortable. You're getting those early vibes around the quarterback one.
Yeah, I think he's looked sharp. I think he's looked evolved as a practice player. That's not something he was really great at earlier in his career. Even I think, in leading up to 2022, I think he looked good in training camp. But I think he's getting better, and I think he does look comfortable. Maybe there's something to the fact that although you're changing your offensive coordinator, there's been a lot of talk about keeping, what they did last year. Maybe it's just the age thing as he matures and experience. But for whatever you want to attribute to, I think Jalen Hurts has looked really comfortable here. Now, we haven't seen him push the ball downfield a ton, although he had that really good throw, probably the play of the day, to Dallas Goedert yesterday along the left sideline there.
Great throw, BLG. Great throw.
Great throw.
Outside shoulder, perfect. Dropped it in the bucket.
And to beat Zach Bond, too, a really obviously good coverage linebacker. So, yeah, Jalen Hurts has just looked comfortable. A lot of short stuff, outside of like a play like that. At the same time, A.J. Brown isn't full participation in these drills. You don't have Devontae Smith. So it's pretty impressive.
BLG, I want to go to Vic Fangio just because I feel like he's such the headliner of the day. And I'm sure we'll get to some of the on-field stuff there. But what stood out to you from what Vic Fangio had to say yesterday? And boy, he said a whole lot, BLG.
Yeah,
but what was the headline?
We need 4 hours. Vic is a treasure, BLG.
Yes, he is.
He's a treasure, and he is proof that you don't have to be super cagey and treat all the information like state secrets, because he's pretty transparent. And guess who had the best unit in the NFL last year. Like his defense was like the best unit of any team.
Yeah.
They're certainly right up there, and certainly the Super Bowl winning impetus there for the Eagles. So you really can just, be a little bit more honest. Maybe you don't even have to do it to the degree that he does, but a little bit more towards that way. I think it'd be nice to see. Obviously, we're incentivized to say that as people who cover the team, but just so many things. I think the injury updates were just funny to me in terms of how secretive the Eagles are about that kind of stuff.
And Vic was up there. August, he's not going to be over.
Yeah. Nakobe Dean, missing some time for a while, as expected, but good to get some more information there. I think maybe the most interesting thing was like the Cooper DeJean utilization, because Vic Fangio, brought up the idea of using him as safety, and we haven't seen that in practice yet. So I don't know how much I'm supposed to buy into that when we're not seeing it in the drills. Then again, we've only been to 2 of the OTA practices. The media has, so it's possible they're doing it on the days we're not there, and possible they do it more this summer. I do think it's a little interesting though, in terms of you just don't see that, right? Like you don't see a guy come in, be your a safety, and then maybe shift down to nickel. Not that it's not unheard of, but like
Josh Metellus, baby, does it all the time. Malcolm used to do it occasionally, not occasionally.
Right.
But yeah, it's very rare. But you know what it tells me about how he talks about Cooper, and that they think he can do anything.
Yep.
At a high level. They think he can play slot. They know he can play slot. They think he can play outside corner. They think he can play safety. So what I took from that is it's about the other guys, like who's ready to play. And then we'll put Cooper in the other spot.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I kind of took it. But they have tremendous confidence in Cooper DeJean, and I think they should. He is a really good football player. But like if Kaylee Ringo and Adoree Jackson fail, maybe he's outside.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe if Makuba's a better nickel player than a safety, maybe he's in the nickel and Cooper's outside. Or maybe Cooper's at safety and Ringo's outside.
Mm-hmm.
You have all these different sort of ways it can shake out, but Cooper's going to be on the field every down. I think that's the key. Even in my pet peeve, BLG, I don't know if it's a pet peeve of yours, but why is base called base when Big Sam are in it 160 times? Why call nickel base?
Yeah.
It drives me nuts. You never play it.
Yeah, about like fewer than 8 times per game, basically.
Yeah.
The math comes out to on that 160 times last year in 21 games. That's a very fair thing. And I think the bigger point, like you're saying, John, there, but you want Cooper DeJean on the field basically no matter what. So that's what they're trying to figure out, and I think that makes sense. He's going to mostly be at nickel cornerback, and if he's not there, then we'll see. I think it's going to tend to be more the cornerback. Like where he's been at right cornerback, because that's what we've seen. That's what he's played before. But maybe not. Maybe there will be a safety involvement in there.
Yeah. What do you think about Trotter early in the season? It's pretty evident that Nakobe's not going to be ready. And, August 1st, if Jahad Campbell's back, is a lot different than, say, August 20th. So there's still some uncertainty with when Jahad's going to be able to practice at a significant level. You think it is going to be Trotter early in the season at linebacker?
Yeah, I'm a little surprised. I guess not shocked, but just given all the rotations you see at safety and cornerback so far, no rotation there at linebacker. Jeremiah Trotter Jr. next to Zach Bond. Maybe that changes, maybe Smile Munden steps up at some point. Obviously, he's a rookie. You don't expect him to get all the first team reps this point in the season, but if he has a strong preseason, he could enter that conversation there. We'll see, but it seems like it's going to be Jeremiah Trotter Jr.'s job to lose until we see somehow either Nakobe get healthy or Jahad Campbell get healthy. It seems like he's the guy.
Yeah, going to be interesting. What'd you make of his comments on Jahad Campbell? We talked about how he brought it up with the injury, which I think is positive, but I'm still having a hard time, BLG, projecting this player. I'm not doubting what the player can be or do, but it's just hard to project. Where is he going to play? What's he going to do? How they're going to use him? Who's coming off the field to put him on the football field? I think there's a lot of questions with the player. What did you make of what Vic Fangio had to say about him?
I think, this sounds obvious, but if he's good, he's going to be on the field. Like, just like Cooper DeJean, like, they're going to find a way to get him out there. And I think it is going to be at inside linebacker first, which is what Vic Fangio had mentioned. They're teaching him first. Now you can say, and even he said, that he feels like there's more to learn there. So you'd want to start him there anyway. But I just, I don't think the plan has been like he's going to be a full-time edge rusher. I think he's going to be an off-ball linebacker who has the ability to rush the passer at times, just like we see Zach Bond do, just like we saw Andrew Van Ginkel do down in Miami. So, I'm expecting something like that ultimately, but, it all depends too how much he's able to play when he actually gets on the field. As we know, Vic Fangio is a big-time proof of concept guy and a big time trust guy. And we didn't see Cooper DeJean play, as you can recall, early last season because he didn't prove himself in training camp. And Sidney Brown didn't get a chance to play basically at all because he wasn't available at all in training camp. So he's just going to need to get out there and earn Vic's trust.
Yeah, I think the Cooper comparison is a good one because, the guy, we know how good he is. We know how smart he is as a football player, but he missed 3 weeks with a hamstring injury, and Vic pushed it back to basically week 6 after the bye week before he pulled the trigger on Cooper DeJean. If that continues with Jahad Campbell, we might not see a large role for him early in the season. Now, other things can impact that as well, BLG. Is there more desperation to get a linebacker on the field, an edge rusher on the field? That might get him on quickly. So a lot of things can play into it. But, it's evident that if Vic has his druthers, he's going to wait until guys are ready. And Cooper's got a pretty high football IQ, so that to me is a good comparison. Do you look at that comp?
Yeah, again, I think it's just he's so much a trust player. I've been coming on here a lot of the weeks here in the offseason, and when we've talked about Bryce Huff's outlook, my line was always like, I don't think Vic Fangio wants to play that guy. So I don't understand how you really keep him and try to make it work when it's kind of just a deal breaker of that guy is not trusted to play. And sure enough, he gets traded. So it's all about trust to me. Looking at the Eagles' schedule here, maybe it's like, okay, you have the mini bye after week 6 when you play the New York Giants on Thursday night there. Otherwise, their actual bye is week 9. That seems kind of late because that's early November, basically. By that point, your last game before the bye is October 26th there against the Giants again. So they don't have the benefit like they did, if you want to call it that, of last year with the early bye to kind of make a big change like that if that's what they feel like they need. Obviously, you don't need that necessarily, but maybe you're looking at that kind of time frame if Campbell's not getting on the field until later in the summer.
BLJ, after yesterday, I was on Peloton's website shopping Pelotons after I heard Jordan Davis. What'd you make of the comments on Jordan Davis, and what do you think he's going to be this year? I am still having a hard time with this player, BLJ, because what does Vic want? Does he want him to play 3 downs? Does he ever want him to be on the field in pass rushing downs? Or is he perfectly good capping him and making him the best run stopper on first and second down that he possibly can? I don't know what Vic wants, but it does seem like he's made positive progressions this offseason in terms of his shape and things like that. What did you make of the Jordan Davis comments yesterday?
Based on his usage late last year, this isn't a guy that Vic Fangio is really trusting and wanting to be out there a ton. Now, things have changed. Milton Williams is gone. You need someone to step up and take some of these snaps that are going to be there. And also, he doesn't seem concerned about Jalen Carter's snap count and playing him a ton. Obviously, it's a different role. But he played a lot of snaps last year. And, just knock on wood, there could be injuries, and there could be a situation where Jordan Davis has to play more than you might expect. Certainly, when you give him the 5th-year option like that, I would think you would have to be expecting him to play a bit more, just because that's a big financial investment. Of course, that doesn't always necessarily guarantee that Vic Fangio is going to play you. Look at Bryce Huff again. But I do think that there is something to the fact that, for as much as I kind of have hesitancy about, like, we're still in year 4 talking about Jordan Davis like getting into shape. And it seems this has been a storyline like each of the past whatever
every year.
Here.
Every year it is.
Every year. But I will say, looking at the history of certain defensive tackles, and Dexter Lawrence really stands out, and maybe is more of the exception, not the norm. It can take time, and the guy can really pop in year 4 here. And I don't know that I'm expecting Jordan Davis to get to quite that level, because that's also a really high bar if you're being compared to Dexter Lawrence. But I mean, he did have 2 sacks in the postseason last year, and he has 3.5 sacks in his regular season career combined. And those were like legit sacks too, and not just like gimmies to me. Like he earned those plays against both Jaden Daniels and Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. So I do think maybe if you want to buy into he could be playing his best football, I'm not totally gonna say that's untrue.
It's kind of a give and take, because if Jordan Davis is playing more, that means Moro Ojomo's probably failed to a certain level. So I'm not sure if the Eagles want that. If you look at it from that standpoint, somebody's got to come off the field. It's probably not going to be one of the edge rushers. So that means it's certainly not going to be Jalen Carter. We know that. And that probably means Moro Ojomo hasn't developed into the pass rusher the Eagles think he could be. And he showed on a very limited level last year. Pressure percentage was off the charts. A lot of one-on-ones, but that will continue. My question, BLG, is why would people want Jordan Davis to be on the field on 3rd down if you have a big-time pass rusher like Milton Williams was and Moro Ojomo maybe?
I mean, if you don't need him, great. But I just think, again, for the investment that you made, like he kind of almost – and to get back to Xander's question, like I don't think it is good enough for him to be, this awesome run defender, which I don't even think he necessarily is. Not that he's a bad one, but I don't think the numbers bear it out. Like their run defense falls off a cliff when he's not in there. I don't think that's the case. I think he helps towards it, but isn't this irreplaceable player. I think ultimately they're going to need him to do more. It doesn't have to be he's a third down pass rushing specialist demon kind of guy, but we need to see more than we've seen to this point from him.
I think the future too, BLG. Like I've tried to do, and I'm not always successful, but I've tried to remove the 13th pick because it's history. Like you can't change it now, but I'm trying to gauge him like, all right, if you pay him after, right, or you picked up the 5th-year option and now you want to give him extension, how much is that worth versus, for what this player is versus, 13th overall pick? I think it's obviously he's a little bit of a letdown from that perspective, but I still don't know exactly what he's going to be. But it should be interesting to see. I do think it's positive that he's in the best shape of his life. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Peloton, and he should go for the Peloton deal. He should.
What did he say? He called out the trainer too. What was the trainer's name? Allie Love or something like that?
I'm not sure.
Recall. I got to look at the transcript.
But it was weird how Vic Fangio talked about that too, in terms.
That was great. That's another big example of because a lot of people. Yeah, we talked about the Bryce Huff trade. I do think the injury played a part in his struggles last year because Vic told me that, but I'm glad he said it publicly. Wasn't able to use his hand, yada, yada, yada. But to your point, certainly wasn't a fit for the scheme as well. But I'm glad he pointed that out. And then you have the group of people that say, well, he's just trying to not throw the guy under the bus. I'm like, Vic just tells the truth. And there was an indication with Jordan Davis. Jeff McClain sort of followed up and said, well, why wasn't he in his best shape earlier in the season? And Vic basically said, I forget the exact wording, but paraphrasing, he said, yeah, I'm going to dodge that question, which is obvious. He didn't do what he needed to do. And then he picked up the Peloton and got in better shape. Vic's honest to a fault. He's not, but I get the perception from fans because most coaches are trying subterfuge at all times. You ask Vic a question, he's going to answer it. And if he doesn't answer it, he's going to do what he did yesterday and say, yeah, I'm not going to answer it, or I'm going to dodge that, or I don't want to answer that. There was that. I remember the video Eagles.com put up answering questions. They do it every once in a while. Howie did it. Vic did it. He got a question. If he didn't like it, he threw it on the ground.
Off the ground.
Yeah. I mean,
it's funny. Vic requires you guys to be different versions of yourself, depending on who you're talking to. With Nick or somebody else, you got to like, how can I get something out of them?
Exactly.
Versus Vic, it's just like, all right, just say whatever you want, or ask whatever you want. You're probably
you
going to
could just ask Vic a question. You could say a name, and you get that's it, basically.
Yeah, right.
And he's going to give you his thought process on that particular player. It is a breath of fresh air. So I thank you, Vic, and keep doing it that way. But to fans who are, and I don't blame fans for being that way because they're used to it. I mean, yes, coaches tend to try to avoid saying anything at any time, but Vic is completely not that way. We were also discussing before you came on, I want to go back to the offensive side because I think it's been interesting. Devontae's been in Florida working out. AJ just does individual work, pretty much doesn't do anything in team drills. So you've gotten to look at the next grouping of receivers. It's generally been Jahan Dotson with Terrace Marshall, Anaya Smith to start, and then Danny Gray's been a big part of it as well. Depth has long been an issue at wide receiver for the Eagles. Obviously, you're going to have a huge drop-off from two great players, but I think the depth here is better than it has been in the past. Do you see that?
I'm not so sure. I'm not sure. I'm not saying I don't believe that. I don't know yet. I do some of the things I like of what I've seen of small sample size here of a couple of practices. And this is actually probably a good thing in terms of AJ not practicing a ton and Devontae not being here. Jalen Hurts now has to throw the ball to Jahan Dotson, and they have to kind of work on their chemistry together. And I think that's a good thing. It's not like you want Dotson getting, 5 targets a game. That's not what you need. But there might be a game where you need to get him 5 targets at some point, and they're not really doing that last year. I think Jalen Hurts only targeted him like 20-something times last year. Like that's crazy. Like a little over once per game for a guy who, I know you have all these other targets, but you're also missing them at times. Like Goddard missed time, certainly, and then AJ and Devontae did earlier in the year. So I like that part. I haven't seen, Dotson like look awesome, but I like the fact that Jalen's going to have to work with him more right now, and I think that's going to be important in terms of the passing offense evolving. Danny Gray looks like he can play a little bit, which is, something Zach Berman had pointed out last year when he pulled the Eagles roster, asking about like the top practice squad players. And you have like, Darius Slay and Cooper DeJean, shouting out Danny Gray, who was a former, third round pick?
Third round pick. And he can run, man. He was
run.
Like a 4.35 guy or something crazy.
So, yeah, really excited to see what he can do. He was back in the mix there, I think, returning kickoffs as well. It could be, there's some return possibility in there for him as well. So, yeah, I'm intrigued to see what this group has. And then, with Avery Williams, he's not practiced yet, but he's listed now under wide receiver after previously being listed as just return specialist only. So apparently he's in the mix there too.
Yeah, not a lot of questions on offense. BLG coming back, you bring back 10 starters out of 11. I mean, not much to answer there, but the one starting spot that's up for grabs is Tyler Steen, right guard spot. Do you believe Tyler Steen will win that job? Have you seen anything that would push you in a different direction at OTAs? What are you seeing so far with that?
I think it's Tyler Steen's job to lose. Of course, you could say the same thing last year, and then he lost.
Yeah, right. I was going to say, this time last year, we said the same thing.
So that's, not set in stone. I do think what we've learned in the spring, or maybe confirmed if you were of the mind before, is that Kenyon Green, I don't think he's as serious in the mix for this job. I think most people are looking at like Tyler Steen or Kenyon Green as much as it's Tyler Steen versus Matt Pryor. I think Matt Pryor is the one who would be more likely to challenge for that starting job, considering he was the second team right guard while Kenyon Green's over there at left guard, which, by the way, is the only position he's played ever in the NFL. He's not taking snaps at another position. So, if if they're not having him rep at right guard, I have a hard time believing he's just going to easily switch over to that spot this season. And, things could change over the course of training camp, but as it stands right now, I think Tyler Steen is going to be the guy. And if I think he gets hurt again or if he falters at all, I think Matt Pryor is going to have that next man up opportunity.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of Jeff Stoutland syndrome where they're like, oh, Stoutland will just make him into and by the way, I should have mentioned congrats to Jeff Stoutland, won the Paul Zimmerman Award, which is from the PFWA for lifetime achievement as an assistant coach. Well deserved for Jeff Stoutland. But I'm with you. I think Matt Pryor is going to be the right guard. He had a really good season, bad team, but really good season for a bad team last year. He's got that big body Stoutland likes at right guard, or he has liked Brandon Brooks, Mekhi Becton, etc. I think he's just a better player. I'm not a big, but I think I probably said this to you before, BLG. I think Tyler Steen is a tackle. I think he's more comfortable as a tackle. I think he looks better as a tackle. He played tackle in college for 5 years. He was a really good tackle, but he had short arms.
Right.
I think he's more comfortable, and I think he'd be a good backup tackle.
He looked really good at tackle to me when he was repping there as a rookie. I guess it was a couple years ago now, or whenever he's had the chance, basically. And I just think you have to think about, too, of where his development went. Like, it's not a surprise to me it's taken him time to adjust to guard, if he even ever does fully do that, because he was playing freaking defensive tackle before he's playing offensive tackle. He's playing defensive tackle at Tennessee at one point. Before he goes to Alabama, he's playing left tackle. Like, from defensive tackle to offensive tackle to guard, like, that's a lot of movement you're going along there, and that shouldn't just be probably like a plug and play kind of player. And I know the arm length thing isn't ideal, but when he has the movement, to me, he looks like for a left tackle. So, like, especially if you're talking about a swing tackle, like, I'll take that. You're not going to get a perfect swing tackle
exactly
behind your starters. So, like, I'm fine with that. I think my frustration with how Tyler Steen has been perceived in the past too is, like, I don't think it's a matter that the Eagles totally missed on that pick. This guy can't play. I think it's been more about just like finding the right fit for him.
Yeah, I'm with you. And it's going to be interesting to see if at some point in the summer, because we talk about the big bodies, and they drafted Miles Hinton and also Cameron Williams, who are thought of as tackles, and that's certainly where they're starting. But again, Jeff Stoutland has proven that he will move guys inside. Even nobody's going to be bigger than Mekhi. So, I mean, that old thought process of, oh, he's a tackle because he's this size, he's already proven. There's no way anybody's going to be bigger than Mekhi Becton. So those guys could get in the mix down the road. But Matt Pryor can play. Not great, but I think he could do a lot worse as far as, you can hope to hit the home run with Steen or even Kenyon Green. But if not, I think you got a nice insurance policy in Matt Pryor. That's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you, Johnny Mac. BLG, any final takeaways here on the OTA, brother? You were down there yesterday. It's good to have the team, like you said at the start of the segment, back on the field. Some good stuff to talk about. Any final takeaways here on Birds 365 that you have for the people? Maybe an inside look through the eyes of Brandon Lee Gowin.
Yeah, I mean, as much as we're talking about Jalen Hurts looking good, I think Tanner McKee looks really good too as the backup quarterback. And obviously, you don't want to have him play if Jalen Hurts gets hurt. But one thing too, just about like what I've been clamoring for in the past, like, let's see Tanner McKee get this full slate of quarterback 2 reps, because when you're the third quarterback, you just don't get to practice much at all. That's your reality. And the Eagles did a little bit more splitting of those second team reps last year at one point with Pickett and McKee. But now it's just totally McKee all the time. I think he looks just really comfortable and looks really good. as that backup quarterback there. So he's really stood out to me. Again, not the most exciting thing, because if Jalen Hurts gets hurt, you're not feeling great. But I do think Tanner McKee can play. And I think we've just seen more and more evidence of that, whether it's preseason, training camp, OTAs now, when he got to play the regular season late last year. Like, this guy looks like he can play, and that's a nice thing to have behind your starter.
Yeah, the ball has barely hit the ground. I haven't checked Elliott's numbers, but the ball has barely hit the ground.
They were good. I saw Elliott's numbers. They were good. They were like, I think 1 or 2 incompletions.
Yeah, from both of them, Jalen Hurts and Tanner. Now, a lot of underneath stuff, as BLG pointed out, but still, Sam Bradford like spring. The ball doesn't hit the ground. I will say this, bold prediction, BLG. Kyle McCord just beat out Dorian Thompson-Robinson yesterday as the third string quarterback.
He made a couple good throws.
I was like, okay.
To me,
well, he could throw the ball. I mean, he threw the ball a lot in college.
To me, with these rookie quarterbacks, these guys they bring in, low-level quarterbacks competing for like that third or fourth quarterback job, whatever. To me, it's about clearing like the Clayton Thorson.
Yes, exactly. I brought up Clayton Thorson bar, the Clayton Thorson bar,
because with those guys, like, you could tell pretty much instantly, like, they just couldn't play. And I think Kyle McCord, small sample size, we'll see how he does in the summer. But for now, I feel like, okay, he can at least, play a little bit.
Yeah. And Dorian had when the ball did hit the ground yesterday, it was Dorian for the most part. So part of it is that as well. But I think Kyle carries himself too as an NFL quarterback. He just carries himself. I don't know if you were at his presser. I forget if that was rookie camp but he just carries himself like an NFL quarterback. And I think that matters to a certain extent. But carries it well, as does BLG at Brandon Gouton on the X platform, Bleeding Green Nation. Check that out every morning to get your latest Eagles news. And we always thank him for joining us. Tremendous job again. Appreciate it, BLG.
BLG, thank you, brother. We'll talk to you next week.
Guys.
There's BLG joining us here on Birds 365. I always love talking to Brandon Lee Gouton, and great stuff from Mike Gill as well earlier. So we had 2 great guests today, 2 great segments in between those guests before and between the two. So great show here, Johnny Mac on Birds 365 after OTAs wrapped up. It is nice to have the Eagles on the football field. I know it's we joke about how much you get from it, but it's a lot better than them not being on the football field. I'll say that.
Yeah, you start to see how things are going to crystallize and how they're going to approach it. Not that things, the competition, as Vic said, is going to happen over the summer, but
and we'll continue, as BLG alluded to. Tyler Steen was the leader in the clubhouse this time last year as well. So
and injuries play a part. Look, if Tyler Steen doesn't sprain his ankle, Mekhi Becton never gets a chance. Perhaps. But there was no evidence. It's not like, I think people forget, he was taking every first team rep until he got hurt.
Right.
And even I remember the practice, and it was a big deal at the time. The next guy in was not Mekhi Becton because he got hurt in practice. The next guy in was Darian Kennard, and it was a big story during the day. And people are writing stories about Darian Kennard, and then they go out for the next practice, and there's Mekhi. And Mekhi never left until he did leave in free agency. Had some banged up at times at points, but he took the job, and that was it. So injuries play a part of it as well. Opportunity. I talked about that a lot with younger players, Jalen Hunt specifically. Nobody expected to play Jalen Hunt. Vic Fangio didn't expect to play Jalen Hunt. He was forced to play him because of the injuries, and he held up better than everybody thought he would.
Yeah.
And things change, and now he's a big part of the plan, evidently. So
I'm with Abe. Abe says, we will miss big ticket. We will. I love big ticket, Mekhi Becton. I like this personality, and I never even met the guy. It radiated through the screen, Johnny Mac.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good guy, and he really enjoyed being here. Really
Yeah.
enjoyed being coached by Jeff Stoutland. Appreciated, essentially the fact that they saved his career,
Yeah,
rebooted his
took a chance
career.
on him and put him out there.
Um,
Yep.
but the business part of it is real, and it comes in. I talk about it all the time. You can ignore it, but you know, they have 4 big time offensive linemen here. They got to pay, and that means you probably can't pay the 5th.
Right. John, last question for me today, brother. Who you leaning toward right now on starting off-ball linebackers for this team week 1? Because I think there's so much question with these injuries. Like, everybody's wondering, what's it going to be week 1? Is it Trotter and Bond? Do you think it's simply those two?
Yeah, I think it's going to be, because I think Trot's going to, he's going to have every opportunity this summer, and unless he fumbles it, it's going to be him, and I don't think he's going to fumble it. He's a good player. I don't know if he's a great player, but I think he's going to be serviceable, solid at least, and I think, long term, Nakobe is still, you heard the way Vic talked about Nakobe. When he's healthy, he's going to be the middle linebacker. When that is, and then when you talk about moving forward to 2026, it's going to be difficult to keep Nakobe Dean for a lot of reasons. Injuries, one of them. Then you're probably looking at Bond and Campbell together, paired up. With Zach as the middle linebacker. But I think when they get to that point, and obviously that's the point they're shooting for long term, I think you're going to see a different player than perhaps you've seen in the past in Philadelphia with Campbell. I think he's going to be a true hybrid who moves around from weak side linebacker to edge rusher, or even interior rusher on obvious passing situations.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see. I'm looking forward to how it all shakes out. Johnny Mac, great show today, brother, as always. Your final thoughts here on this Wednesday edition of Birds 365. We'll be right back here tomorrow, 8 a.m. on Birds 365 tomorrow morning. Your final thoughts today.
I think the playground build is today. The final OTA practice is on Thursday. That will
You don't have to go anywhere for that, do you, John? Like, are you going to the playground thing?
No. But anyway, they're going to have the final OTA practice on Thursday, and then minicamp next Tuesday, which is mandatory. Then the summer break, and so enjoy it. Next Tuesday is the last practice until training camp. So yeah, enjoy the players on the field.
Yep, no doubt about it. Johnny Mac, great stuff today, brother. As always, we appreciate it. When is training camp? Like you said, July 21st?
Not official, but yeah, judging, it's going to be somewhere. Pittsburgh just announced I just retweeted it out. They announced their training camp dates. Now, they're one of the few teams that still goes to off-site, their facility. They're starting July 24th.
Do they typically start on a Monday? Because there's the July 21st and 28th are the 2 Mondays there at the end of July.
Well, they typically have a reporting day. It might be Tuesday, Wednesday, but either or.
All right, so it could be any of those days between.
Yeah, they have a reporting day. I think because of the timing of the first preseason game, they'll push it back a week. That's why I went to 21st, but that's just speculation.
Right. All right, brother. Good show, man. We appreciate you as always, Johnny Mac. We'll talk to you tomorrow, man.
All right. Thanks, all.
All right, there's Johnny Mac, John McMullen joining us here on Birds 365. Great show today, as always. Great show. Great interviews with our 2 guests, Mike Gill and Brandon Lee Gowan. They were both excellent on the show today, as they always are. I can't thank all of you guys enough for being here, for commenting, liking, sharing, subscribing, doing all the things you guys do here on the show to make this show possible, to make it grow all through the off season. So we appreciate each and every one of you. All right, I'll take a couple of comments from you. I'll say this. My general feeling, and hey, maybe this is clouded by an Eagle fandom or by the green colored glasses that they say that we wear. And I'm okay with that. I mean, they told me I had green colored glasses last year too. And we went to the Super Bowl. So, I don't really care when people say that, whether they're green or not. I try and be as objective as I can. And my general feeling right now is that this team is going to be really good. That some of the concerns that we have on defense, while they are not non-existent, they are not the type of concerns that would derail a season. All right. I feel really good about where we are offensively. I feel really good about Jalen Hurts coming in this year. I think I'm with John. I think Jalen Hurts is going to have a massive season this year. I think the whole thing with Kelsey, while I understand it's a sensitive topic because Kelsey did so much for the city, the team, and the organization, I think it's a huge plus for him, taking over the reins last year. He got better and better at it each week, so much so that I thought his best 2 games at calling out stuff at the line of scrimmage was the NFC title game in the Super Bowl. I mean, the NFC title game, remember Saquon Barkley did first play, boom, run 65 yards. We'll go back and watch that play, everybody. Jalen Hurts comes up, assesses the line of scrimmage, checks out of the play, looks again, checks back into the play, and Saquon goes crazy, and takes it 65 yards to the house. So I think Jalen Hurts' best football is all in front of him. And that's a beautiful thing, considering he was a Super Bowl winning quarterback, a Super Bowl MVP, and obviously, took a large part of that on his shoulders to get there. He had Saquon Barkley last year, but you don't win that game at the end of the year. You don't win the NFC title game if Jalen Hurts doesn't play great. So I think the team is in a great spot. I really do. I don't think this team is going to have a collapse. I don't think they're going to take a huge regression. They might not win the Super Bowl again because it's a very hard thing to do and it's an uphill battle, but I think they're in a really good spot. I think they're gonna do some good things. I really do. I think they're gonna do some good things. So I'm feeling pretty good about the team. I'll say that. It was good talking to Mike Guild, good talking to BLG. Even Johnny Mack had a little bit of optimism post-practice. All right. Damn, Fredo, my bad, brother. My bad, man. I didn't even know I had it. Is Johnny Mack putting on the gloves? What does that even mean? What does that even mean, is Johnny Mack putting on the gloves? What does that even mean? I don't know what you mean, Fredo. My bad for not reading the super chat, though, man. All right. I appreciate everybody for being here today. Bill says, Xander, let's grab a drink this summer. Hang out with your Uncle Pill. I don't have an Uncle Pill, but I don't know what that means. I don't think I'm going to hang out with a guy who has an anonymous name and a Bill Cosby name and picture. Yeah, let's do it. Let's get a drink. I don't know about that. I'm not that stupid. I'm not that stupid. All right. Come on, man. Dank says, I swear, we're the only fan base who isn't allowed to think their team is good. Well, Dank, here's what you're experiencing right now. And you're right that it wasn't always now, but it's heightened now, Dank, because we're so successful. So now everybody wants to grab at us, claw at us, fans, reporters, players, everybody. Everybody. I mean, even I saw Kayvon Thibodeau taking shots. Micah Parsons, CeeDee Lamb. They're all constantly taking shots. I mean, Kayvon Thibodeau is worried about Eagles fans. What the fuck you worried about? Yo, you are a number 5 overall draft pick. Go back to the drawing board and start doing something on the football field. What the fuck are you crying about Eagles fans' intelligence for? Oh, wait. That's what happens when you're at the top of the mountain. It's just the truth. All right? It's just the truth, man. It's just the truth. Weirdo asking a man to have a drink with him. Flexing, that wouldn't be me, brother. First off, I don't drink. All right. I don't drink, so I got no interest. But if one of the great people of JAKIB Nation did want to have a drink, honestly, not this goofy anonymous dude, I would do it. I mean, are you kidding me? I like hanging out with JAKIB Nation. I'll say this, the best thing I've done since I've started JAKIB, and this was not a year ago, this was 5 years ago now, almost 5 years ago. The best thing I've done was probably the parade, because I got to meet so many people. That was my favorite. That was the most fulfilling day, because I got to meet people, put a face to a name, shake hands, talk to people. I met Cali Baby. Obviously, Flexen was with me down there. The great, the legendary Akbar. So I do love that stuff. You know, I don't like to run from that stuff. But yeah, a lot of goofies. I'm waiting for Twizzler to come to town. This dude Twizzler lives on, like, I think he might live on the back, like in the back of a pickup truck, out in like the middle of the tumbleweeds in West Virginia. Like, where is this Twiz dude? I want to hang out with Twiz. I don't think I'll ever come back to Philly, though. You know, once upon a time, Twiz, you were a real Philly man. Now you're just some scrub blowing tumbleweeds out in the West Virginia farmlands. Come on, Twizzler. Come on, Twizzler. Xander, you were so hyped during that time like a kid at the candy shop. Hey, it was fun, man. It really was. It was a good day. It was a good month, really a good month for all of Eagles Nation. I don't think it was just me that felt that, Abe. I think everybody, at least I got the sense that all of my listeners felt that as well. You know, they got that as well. They felt the moment. They felt, you know, what was happening with the Eagles and in the city. And Abe, I know you're not local to Philly, but you know, for anybody who does live in this city or around this city or even in this area, it's bigger than just a city, by the way. It's the tri-state. It's even Jersey. I mean, when the Eagles win, man, it's something special. It really is, especially the city. I mean, just being down in the city, dude, when they won was I don't know if I'll ever forget that. It sounds crazy to say because there's more opportunity for this team to continue to win, and hopefully we have more parades together and things like that. But when this team wins, man, it's special. It is special. I mean, you just feel the energy in the air. The city was glowing that day. I got down there at 4:45, man, in the morning. I didn't want to leave. And then remember I got back and I was on the National Football Show that day. That was, if you watch anything outdated from what we did here on JAKIB, that's an interview I'd recommend you watch. When I got home from the parade, all right, that was the Eagles won the Super Bowl February 9th, right? Yeah, February 9th. And then the parade was that Friday, I believe, right? February 14th. So my segment with Cilio on February 14th, that was one for the record books. All right, that was one for the record books. You guys might want to go back and rewatch that thing, man. That was so fun. Fredo says, yeah, Fredo, when you know the city like me, you don't get stuck in traffic. All right? So Fredo's like, ooh, let me load up Google Maps. Take me to City Hall. Take me to the best cheesesteak place. Man, I know what I'm doing, Fredo. I got out of there and got home for the National Football Show before the day was out, Fredo. I didn't have this issue. All right? Speak for yourself, Fredo. Look at this. Vulnerable vitality. Thank you, brother. He puts $10. He says, come out to Missouri with me for the Chiefs game. I'll be working, so I won't be able to do that. But vulnerable, I would love to get a drink with you if you're ever in Philly or you want to hang out or whatever. You want to meet me, whatever you want to do. I don't care. I'll do it. I appreciate you, man. I appreciate it. One of our best supporters here on JAKIB Sports is Vulnerable Vitality. Key says, I wish I had a helicopter for all that traffic. Yeah, I was hanging out with, before I left there, I was hanging out with, I was with Flex most of that day. And then I was hanging out with Akbar a lot too before we rolled out. Akbar got there real late. I remember being in the morning and I was already on the parade float. All right, the thing that Flex, you obviously know the big truck that we had that we all chilled on all day. Joe Whipp, I haven't seen Joe Whipp in here in a little bit, but he was there as well. Akbar's like, we're already up and set up. The parade's like started going. And Akbar puts in the chat, I'm on my way. I'm like, Akbar, there is no effing chance you make it to me. And he did. He worked his ass off and he got there. So I loved hanging out with Akbar. He was a cool ass dude, man. He was a cool ass dude. I feel like I know Akbar personally. Twiz says, I live in a van down by the river. The great Twizzler. Twiz, that's the best nickname for you, and I dubbed it, and you know it. It's Twizzler. That's the best nickname for you. Twizzler. He made it. Yeah, Callie was there. Callie was there with his wife and his kids. That was awesome, meeting Callie. Mike Berghorst. I met Mike. I met Arthur Humler. Who else did I meet? I met a bunch. There's one dude. I have the funniest video of me and the one dude. And I wish I knew his name because he was drunk. So, but he didn't tell me his name at all. He didn't tell me his name at all. He just saw me. And he's like, let me find the video. He just gives me this slow ass hug. There's us chilling right there. I'd have to turn off my there's us chilling right there. Hey, look, he just gives me this hug. I had no idea who it was. All I know is he said, I love watching you on YouTube. I'm like, what's up, bro? He was a high on life, man. High on life. All right. Drunk and high on life that the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl. All right. Listen, we run it back this year. Philly, Don, you're there. Francis, you'll be there. Alfredo, you're coming. Brandon Howard, you're flying in from shitty Canada. All right. Keith, you're coming. Yeah, the love was in the air. Keith, it's funny you said that. You ready? Remember my interview for 6ABC? Ready? On 6ABC. This team, when they win, they bring love to the city. You hear that, Keith? This team, when they win, they bring love to the city. There's love in the air. That's what I said on 6ABC. That was a great 6ABC spot, by the way. Yeah, Slager, you're my one regret from the parade day. Slager, I'm on the air. Slager's right in front of me, talking to the great people, talking to my sister, talking to my girlfriend, talking to the great people of JAKIB Nation. So close yet so far, Slager. I didn't get to meet you. Z ghosted me. The cops wouldn't let me pass the barrier, but I did get to meet his dad, which is nice. Slager, that was BS. They should have let you pass that barrier because everybody else was going in and out of the barrier. But that was cool. Great day. Great day, man. I missed that day. I really did. That was fun. That was probably the best day of the year. Best day of the last 12 months. All right. Best day of the last 12 months for sure. All right, everybody. I appreciate you all for tuning in today. All right. Great show today. All right. I got the open premiering on the channel right now. So if you missed the first segment of the show today, it's worth watching. Johnny Mac gave his takeaways from the OTAs. All right. So we'll have that. We had Mike Gill, BLG. I'll post them all up on JAKIB Sports. Appreciate each and every one of you. Rich, Flex, Illuminati, Slager, Alfredo, Jason A-Team, Ryan, M. Kip, all you guys. I appreciate it. Keith, Brandon Howard. Who else is in here? Mad Bird's in here. Dank Bird Gang, as always. Illuminati. Prince Swayze. Prince, I can't believe you didn't pull up to the last parade. Scott Squaw with a super chat says, Jalen Hurts is a sleeper for MVP this year. I agree. I had him in my top. Remember we did our bold predictions? Let me find my bold predictions. Me and Cilio did bold predictions a couple of months ago. Here we go. Boom. My number one bold prediction is this. Jalen Hurts will finish top 3 in MVP voting. There you go. My number one bold prediction. My number 2 bold prediction was Eagles will be the first back-to-back NFC East winner since 2004. Eagles will win 13 games, as I predicted in my record prediction. Defense will finish top 5 in the NFL. That is very bold. All right. Cowboys will beat out Commies for second in the NFC East. I'm still sticking to that. Jalen Carter and Zach Baum will be first-team All-Pro. Josh Uche will be the best bargain signing, 6 sacks. I don't know about that one. Jalen Hurts will throw for 4K yards. I don't know about that one either. Defense will have more sacks in 2024. They had 45. And 10th, the Philadelphia Eagles will repeat as Super Bowl champions. Those are my 10 bold predictions. All right. Thank you for bringing that back up, Scott Squad. It was my number 1. Bird Gang Girls in here. Izzy B, Abe, M. Kip, Steve Ike. Appreciate all you guys, man. Appreciate all of you guys for checking in, for tuning in, for locking in, for liking, sharing, subscribing. Appreciate all of you guys. See you next time, everybody, on Birds 365.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate, inside the locker room, and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.